Yeah, it was great, especially because on Friday there was nobody like sitting.
It's like the third in this year. Well, oh my gosh, did you read the third one? That's crazy. Yeah. I was confused. I mean, I didn't run into our class. We might have more contact. I was.
Yeah.
Where did you know?
So on Friday. Like it was totally like sliding, like telling people like where they do like what their etiquette was for the day and stuff, and they were like running tweets of like this station is full, this station is full, this station is full. I didn't even think to look there. We were like rushing out.
This is great. Getting a stool.
We had no trouble. I mean, we left about something pretty important.
Yeah, I got up at 4:30 Sunday. No, I got up at 4:30. I took about 8 minutes working on it. I got home.
Which side? You right or left? No, are you running it off there and it's going through that computer? Alright, do you need the other computer or are you going to use it as a clicker? Alright, then are you ready? So hold on 1 second.
You want more leg?
Can I start?
So. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to McNally Jackson. It's nice to see you. Thank you for coming out in the weather. Unfortunately, Boston got hit worse, so one of our hosts tonight, Josh, is stranded in Boston. But we have the wonderful and lovely Ella Morton here tonight to introduce you guys or reacquaint you with Atlas Obscura. I gave 3 copies of it away for Christmas. It's fantastic. My girlfriend loves Weird New Jersey magazine, so she was a natural. Neil Gaiman says that he thought he had seen most of the strange places in the world, but this book proved him wrong. If you know about the book, you know tonight's going to be fun. If you don't, you're in for a treat. Please make our guest feel very welcome.
Hello everybody. As has been mentioned, my co-author and the co-founder of Atlas Obscura, Joshua Four, unfortunately could not make it tonight due to the weather, and I thank you all for coming out in this horrendous slushy rain. So he sends his apologies, but I'm going to give you a great amount of fodder for your future trivia nights / cocktail parties. So it's going to be all good. Are people familiar with Atlas Obscura, either in website or book form, or both? Yeah? Okay, cool. So just a quick rundown of how this all came about. Atlas Obscura began in 2009 as a collaboration between Josh, who you may know from having written Moonwalking with Einstein, being part of a great literary dynasty, and Dylan Thuris, who you probably do not know from having edited a Paris Hilton documentary, because that's what he was doing before Atlas Obscura, and that's the point at which he decided he wanted to do something else. So the two of them are great travelers. They like to seek things that are off the beaten path. They love museums that are open on Tuesdays from 2 till 6, that are run by one passionate person who has like a cave full of hair or a collection of mustard in Madison, Wisconsin. They love these sorts of things, and so they wanted to create a compendium of such places, a guide to the world's hidden wonders. And a hidden wonder can be anything from the Mustard Museum in Madison, Wisconsin, to a cathedral in Madrid that is built by one man, by hand, because one day he just woke up and decided that that's what he wanted to do. It can be a bay full of bioluminescent squid in Toyama in Tokyo. And so we don't really have a particular checklist of requirements for what constitutes a hidden wonder that is Atlas Obscura compatible. But it ideally will have an element of the hidden. It will be surprising in some way, and it will. It often exists in a place that you might walk past all the time, or a place that is a lot more familiar to travellers. So the classic example is the Eiffel Tower is not a hidden wonder, but the apartment at the top of the Eiffel Tower that Gustave Eiffel built to entertain and schmooze VIPs like Thomas Edison, that had a grand piano in it and wall-to-wall plush carpeting, that is a hidden wonder. And those are the sorts of things that we are seeking to collect and show off via Atlas Obscura. So the website began as this really small collection that Josh and Dylan made of places that they had personally been to, and then they decided to open it up to submissions from people around the world. And this concept of the hidden wonder was slightly amorphous. It was unclear as to whether people would really care enough to submit their own places or know what the hidden wonder thing was all about. But we now have over 10,000 places in the database, and it seems infinite. We often wonder, are we going to run out of places? Are we going to run out of wondrous things on this strange earth of ours? But we get so many new submissions every day, and every day something comes through that we go, what? That can't be real. But it is. So our first book came out in September last year, and it's kind of a sampler platter or a greatest hits version of the website. It has some new places in there and all the writing is new, but we wanted to have something that you could hold in your hand that was basically a best of, that was a starting point for what is an Atlas Obscura place. And it's not really a travel guide in the sense that, say, A Lonely Planet or 1,000 Places You See to See Before You Die is. We don't expect that people will be putting it in their backpack and going around Europe. But it's a way to say, here's what's out there in the world. Here are some perspectives through which people are seeing it, creative, interesting people. What else can you find that might be out there? This is a starting point for further exploration. And so what I wanted to do tonight is to take you on a bit of a world tour via this book, to just show you some highlights of places that are in there, to give you an idea of what is out there in the world. So let us begin our world tour. Okay, so these are some route bridges in a place called Cherrapunji, which is in the north of India. And this is one of the first few submissions that the Atlas Obscura website received. And this was the point at which we thought, yeah, we're onto something. People have incredible things to show us. So Cherrapunji is one of the most humid places in the world. It's real wet. And one of the problems with establishing infrastructure in a place like this is that it quickly collapses. Metal rusts, wood rots. So this is one of the ingenious solutions that some of the villagers here have come up with. And how they work is they will establish a trestle across the lake, and then they will guide the aerial roots of these trees across that trestle. And gradually, slowly, over a period of about 15 years, those roots become strong enough to walk across. And these bridges can keep growing for centuries. And there are a few of them in this region, but this one is particularly cool because it's double-decker. And the second one, the higher one, is there so that when the river level rises and the first one is subsumed in water, you can still get across on the top one. Okay, so this is also a bridge. This microphone's, there we go. Although a slightly strange one. It only appears twice a year for an hour or so each time, once in May and once in June. It's called the Jindo-Modo Land Bridge, and it unites the islands of Jindo and Modo in South Korea. And there's a bit of mythology associated with this land bridge. It essentially involves the South Korean version of Moses. The story goes that a tiger attacked the island of Jindo and everyone fled, except for one elderly woman who got stuck behind. And as the tiger was encroaching toward her, she said, "No, I'm not going to have this," and prayed to the sea god for a land bridge to open up for the waters to recede, pseudo-Moses-like, so that she might escape via a passage to the island of Modo. And according to the mythology, that did happen. So now, to honour this, every year in May and in June, the residents of Jindo and Modo, and anyone else who wants to join the party, will each walk from the island along the bridge to the middle, greet each other, and then walk back. Okay, this is a place that's about 100 miles north of Los Angeles. And in 1958, this sort of eccentric urban planner named Nat Mendelsohn came up with a stellar idea. And the idea was to establish a car-centric mega metropolis in the Mojave Desert. So he bought up 80,000 acres, and he laid out all of these streets. He gave every single street a name, and that's about as far as the entire project got, because he overestimated people's willingness to move to the middle of the Mojave Desert and establish a car-centric metropolis. But these streets are still here. They're a bit overgrown, there's some sand encroaching on them. But from the sky it looks like a giant circuit board. And we do real-world exploration as part of Atlas Obscura. We have events, and we have a thing called Obscura Day every year where there are events all around the world. And one of them a few years ago was to have a big convoy going out to this place, California City, and exploring all the abandoned streets. It was really cool. This is like a greatest hit of the greatest hits. This is in a place, it's in the Turkmenistan desert, and it is essentially the result of an industrial accident, because in 1971, a team of Soviet geologists was drilling in the desert for natural gas. And they found it, but they found it in this big subterranean cavern. So when they were drilling down, it collapsed and their entire drilling rig fell in to this methane-filled hole. This is about 200 feet wide. And perhaps driven by panic, they decided to set the whole thing on fire. I guess believing that it would burn off in a matter of hours, days, weeks. It's been 45 years and it's still burning. You can actually walk up to the edge of it and peer in. There is, I think it's an urban legend, but apparently the light attracts spiders who like fling themselves into the flaming hole just to make it extra strange and hellish. It is referred to as the gates of hell or the door to hell, locally.
Saruman's eye.
So this guy goes by the name of Ra Paulette, and he is one of the self-made, creative, eccentric visionaries that we like to celebrate at Atlas Obscura. Some people hand-build cathedrals. This guy carves caves, and every day he puts a wheelbarrow on his back and picks up a shovel and walks out into the New Mexico desert and goes into one of his subterranean caves. He's made a dozen since 1992. And just starts carving. He follows the natural curves, and he makes all these wonderful designs. And he does take commissions if you want your own subterranean sandstone cave in New Mexico, but you can't really give him a blueprint of what you want. He will listen to your ideas, but he will be guided by the muse. Okay, it's a little hard to see the details on this guy's face, but his name is Shinyokai Shonin, and he's not looking very good now, but not so bad when you consider that he died in 1783 at the age of 96, and the cause of death was self-mummification. Now, you may be thinking, okay, I studied ancient Egypt in school, I know, at least in theory, how to mummify someone else. But how do you mummify yourself? Surely that's impossible. It's possible, but really quite difficult. Shinyokai Shonin was a member of the Shugendo variant of Buddhism in northern Japan, and for a few centuries, some of the most devoted monks of Shugendo attempted this practice. And it began with a 1,000-day restrictive diet. It was basically nuts and seeds, and a lot of exercise thrown in with that so that you could strip the fat off your body. After those 1,000 days, things got even more restrictive. You were basically restricted to a diet of bark and sap from the urushi tree. And the sap from the urushi tree is usually used to lacquer wood. So the idea of that was you would be lacquering your internal organs from the inside. And once that was done, things were pretty dire. The monk was close to death. So he went into a tomb, he sat in a lotus position and recited mantras. And every day rang a bell that would alert the people above so that they would know that he was still alive. And once the bell stopped ringing, the tomb was sealed. He was left in there for a little while, just to finish off. And then his body would be taken out and venerated in the manner of a Catholic saint. And a few hundred monks attempted this. About 24 were successful, and about 16 are still on display in temples in northern Japan. This is one of them. The practice was outlawed in the Meiji period, which is 19th century, by the emperor, who I imagine was like, guys, we need some limits. Okay, so there's another phenomenon in the Atlas Obscura world, which is the phenomenon of the local wonder, or the sort of local lore, mythology, conspiracy theory. This is one great example of that. This is called the Devil's Kettle. It's in Minnesota, on the North Shore of Lake Superior. And as you can see, it's a waterfall that splits into two. And on the right side, the waterfall keeps going down. And on the left side, it goes into a hole and emerges no one knows where. And this is a mystery that has not been solved. And people have tried to solve the mystery. They've thrown ping pong balls in there. They've thrown GPS devices in there. They've dyed the water. But nothing has emerged anywhere. And I like to think that there's a farm somewhere where occasionally the field turns pink and these little ping pong balls pop up. But if you want to try to solve the mystery, go to Minnesota. Okay, so this is, I think someone knows what it is already in the crowd. This is a place that you are not technically allowed to go to unless you can prove that you have a scientific reason for visiting. It's an island off the coast of Sao Paulo in Brazil. And the reason you can't go there is in the name. It's called Snake Island. And it is crawling with golden lancehead vipers, which are endemic to this island. They are rather deadly. Their venom is not a good time. If it doesn't kill you, it will maim you pretty significantly. And what is particularly interesting about Snake Island is the population density of the snakes. There have been various terrifying estimates over the years, but one popular one is that there is one snake per square metre. And I work in metric, I'm from the Commonwealth, but if you don't work in metric, all you have to remember is that on Snake Island you're never more than 3 feet from potential death. And another detail about Snake Island that I love is the snakes are not just terrestrial, they're also arboreal. So you might be walking along, if you've gotten permission to be on the island, and one will fall from the trees. There are lots of legends associated with this place. Who knows if they're true? They involve like fishermen getting lost one night and ending up in a pool of their own blood. But either way, you probably shouldn't go there. So there was a period after aircraft first began to be used as a way of delivering weapons, and before the development of radar, when there were some interesting solutions deployed for how to detect an incoming bombing raid. And this is one of the ones that the British came up with. These are concrete acoustic listening mirrors that are on the south coast of England, and the idea was that these curves would amplify the sound of the Luftwaffe coming in if they were on their way to bomb. On this one you can see there's a microphone stand. And the idea was that some poor chap would sit at the bottom with this device that looked like a stethoscope and just listen for the Germans. And they had various different shapes that would be targeted to different areas. And they were not that effective. They provided some advance warning, but not a lot more than, say, human ears. So they were not so useful. But these are still standing on the south coast of England. You can go visit them. Haha. All right, that is Josh, actually. Hi, Josh. This is the Quechua-Chaca, also known as the last Incan bridge. And it is in Peru. And it is hand-woven from the grass that's on the bottom right here. And bridges like these used to be all over the Andes. They were part of the infrastructure there. They existed for centuries. But as far as we know, this is the last one that exists. And Josh and Dylan visited this place, I think in 2005. And the way that it works is that there's a yearly cycle where the bridge will be woven, and then it will last for the whole year, and then they will cut it down and let it fall into the valley, or sometimes they set it on fire, which is really cool. But the bridge does start to sag throughout the year, so that's why it needs to be rewoven. This was toward the end of the cycle, which is probably why he looks to be holding on for dear life. But it has this great sort of Indiana Jones feel. Has anyone been to Luray Caverns in Virginia? Yeah! So there are these great roadside caves that sort of pop up everywhere. But these ones have a particular feature that is quite fascinating. It just looks like a church organ in a cave, which is a bit weird, but what you're not seeing is the rest of what makes this the world's largest musical instrument. In the 1950s, a guy with a really cool name, Leyland Sprinkle, went spelunking in these caves and came across an idea for what he would call the stalagpipe organ. And what he did was he wired this central console with 5 miles of cable to all these different stalactites. And he had to find the ones that were the exact right tone so that when you struck them, they would make the right noise. And he spent years doing this. So now this organ has been there ever since. He used to play it himself. Now it is automated, but you can still buy CDs in the gift shop with organ music. And I think they're marketed as musical gems from solid rock. Okay, this is another thing invented by a guy with a great name. So this device was created in 1851 and exhibited at the London Exhibition. It is a weather prediction device because a surgeon by the name of George Merriweather had noticed that when a storm was approaching and the barometric pressure changed, freshwater leeches would get a little bit agitated and they would wriggle around. And he thought, how can I harness this phenomenon for meteorological good? So he decided to build this device, which he called the Tempest Prognosticator. And it looks like a little carousel. In each of these jars is a freshwater leech, and these leeches are attached by leashes to the top bells here. It's a little bit like the self-mummified monks ringing the bell. And what would in theory happen was that when a storm was approaching, the leeches would wriggle around, the bells would ring, and you would think, okay, time to bring in the laundry. It didn't so much work, kind of like the acoustic mirrors, but I'm sad about that because I would love to have one of these in my kitchen. This particular model is on display at one of the museums we adore. It's called Barometer World. It is a world of barometers. It's located in Devon, England. Alright, so this place is right near where I'm from. It's off the southeast coast of Australia. And it is a volcanic shard. I think it's about 1,800 feet tall. And in 2001, two scientists were scaling these barren, inhospitable walls because they had heard rumors from a bunch of climbers that a creature that the world had given up on still existed on this shard. And the creature goes by a few different names. It's referred to as the walking sausage. It's about the size of your palm and it looks like a stick insect. Its official name is the Lord Howe Island stick insect. And there is an island about 13 miles away from this thing where they used to exist. They used to run rampant. And then in 1918, black rats were introduced to the island. And after that, these walking sausages began to disappear. And by 1930, they seemed to be extinct. So everyone had just given up on this whole walking sausage thing. But in 2001, these two scientists were about that far up, and they came across, in a little hole, 24 walking sausages. So the next question was, what do we do with them? Because who knows how they even got there? Who knows how they stayed there? They seem such a fragile, tiny population. And so they thought about it for 2 years. And in 2003, they decided to take 2 walking sausage pairs to the Melbourne Zoo and try to begin a breeding program. And unfortunately, the first pair died, but the second pair became the basis for what is now a 1,000-strong Lord Howe stick insect population at the Melbourne Zoo. And they were nicknamed Adam and Eve. So has anyone been to the Uffizi in Florence? It's where you see all the art that you're supposed to see. The Birth of Venus, there's some Michelangelo in there, there's some Da Vinci, a bunch of Botticelli. And it's great, you should go. But in summer, there are really long lines to even get inside. You're standing in the hot sun. Around the corner from the Uffizi, with no lines ever, is a much smaller museum, a science museum. And it is there that you will find Galileo's middle finger. The middle finger of modernity. Galileo died in 1642, and while his remains were being moved from place to place, this finger was swiped, apparently by an admirer. It's been in various places over the years since then, but since 1927 it has been in this science museum. And the way it's presented is in this sort of chalice goblet type thing with gold edging. As to how you interpret this, it's sort of up to you. You know, you could see it as an act of defiance, or you could simply believe that it's his finger indicating the heavens. It's up for the viewer to interpret. Okay, so Iceland is really popular right now. Everyone's going to Iceland. I don't know how many people go to the Icelandic Museum of Witchcraft and Sorcery, which is a few hours outside Reykjavik. And it is there that you will find this garment. It's called the necropants. And the story, according to the curators there, goes like this. In the 17th century, it was apparently common practice to, well, you would start by approaching a male acquaintance and saying, "When you die, may I have your skin? Only from the waist down." And ideally the male acquaintance would say, "Yeah, sure, go for it." Then you would wait for them to die and exhume their corpse, flay their skin from the waist down, put on their skin as though they were trousers. And then comes the part of the procedure that I find a little bit objectionable. You have to approach a poor widow and steal a coin from them, and then place it in the scrotal pocket of the necropants. And the idea of this was that this one coin in the groin would attract more coins, would bring you wealth, would bring you prosperity and luck. And apparently what you did was wait for more coins. Once you were rich enough, satisfied with your wealth, or the pants had begun to chafe, whichever came first, you would then take off the necropants one leg at a time and transfer them to the next lucky recipient, and the procedure would start all over again with some other poor widow being fleeced. We've not been able to confirm the veracity of any of this, but we like it. It's a good story, and it's what the curators at the Icelandic Museum of Witchcraft and Sorcery will tell you if you visit. Okay, so this is also in Peru. These are the Gokta Falls, or the Gokta Cataract, and they're located just outside a very small village called Cocachimba. And until 2005, these falls were not known to anybody outside this really small area. And a German tourist happened to be passing through and saw these falls and said to the villagers, "These are really tall falls, like really tall, like probably top 10 in the world tall." And after he left, he came back with some measuring equipment, and so there are various ways to measure waterfalls, as I have discovered on the internet. There's a lot of debate about it. There's really impassioned people on both sides. But by some measure, these are the third tallest waterfalls in the world. And Josh and Dylan were here in 2005, and they were talking to some locals, and they said, "How did you not know that these were the third tallest waterfalls in the world?" And they said, "Well, yeah, we knew that they were tall, but we figured, there's so much more out there in the world, and we just sort of got used to the fact that they were there. They started to fade into the background." And this is sort of what we see all the time at Atlas Obscura, is that we are all living at the base of Gokta Falls in some way. There's always, no matter where you live, there is something around the corner, down the street, in your state, in your country, that is incredible, that you just may not be noticing, or you may have gotten used to. And our mission at Atlas is to share those places with the world. And that's what we hope will happen with this book. We would love for you to contribute to this project. We'd love to see what your hometowns have. And we hope that this provides a starting point and a little guide. So that concludes the formal presentation portion of this. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, it's been fun. Yes?
Do you ever get a submission and not publish it because you don't want people to know and you want to keep it?
It is tempting. There are some incredible places that, yeah, well, we want to go there first. But that's sort of against the spirit of this whole thing. One question we do get asked a lot is, are you doing a terrible thing by exposing these secret, cool places to the world? And we don't think so. We want to be really careful about that. And we have found that, especially with these little places like museums where it's run by one person who has this great passion that they want to share with the world, those are the places that tend to close because not enough people are visiting them. So we love giving love and attention to those places and providing a way for other equally impassioned people who want to go to the Canoe Museum in Portland, Oregon, to find the way to do that. But yeah, we wouldn't keep stuff to ourselves.
Hi.
Hi.
What are the people like that work at Atlas Obscura? Is it just like a bunch of Buckminster Fullers like running around?
Yes, inventor of the geodesic dome. Yeah, it's a bunch of nerds, really. I mean,
Like really specific nerds.
Yeah. I mean, Josh is really into dice that have like 100 and something sides. He has this thing of like, how many sides can dice have? He likes to read a lot of mathematical articles about it. But yeah, we all have these sort of trivia-based obsessions. Yeah, I took the free desktop encyclopedia that I got with my Carmen Sandiego video game to bed at night when I was 8. And was like opening to a random page, seeing what's out there in the world. I think we are all those types of people at Atlas. We get really impassioned about these particular things and we like to share them with each other. And I think that is sort of the impulse that drives the whole thing. And that's what we see from our contributors, because we have all these super users who are going around exploring things, being like, did you know about this museum? And we love to hear from those people because they're our kind of people. Any other question? Yes.
Do you have any favorite spots in New York?
Oh, New York. Yes. I like the places that people walk past all the time without knowing that there's something there. There's, on Wall Street at the old Chase building, there's a series of pockmarks beneath one of the windows. And there's no plaque or anything to say what that is. And it's from a terrorist attack in 1920 in which a bomb was placed on a horse-drawn cart. And no one was ever convicted, but they think it was a bunch of Italian anarchists that were like fresh from the Bolshevik Revolution. But that's a place that people walk past every day without knowing that something amazing happened there, and there's this physical history that you can touch. Stuff like that is amazing to me. There's also this cemetery in Bushwick where all the headstones are metal and hollow, so they've sort of started collapsing over the years. It looks really cool and creepy. I like that place. Yeah. Yeah.
What's the most creepiest thing you experienced? I mean, with the book. Yeah.
Or not. On the stuff like that.
Yeah, it's interesting with creepy stuff. Because when Atlas Obscura began, it was, a lot of the focus was on this sort of Victorian macabre, bone churches, ossuaries, mummified stuff. I think that's sort of what we were known for. But we've sort of tried to move away from that a little bit. We were sort of more in line with morbid anatomy type stuff, which is just closed, which is really sad. So I'm trying to think of what's been creepy. This is like creepy in a different, strange way, but when I was in Poland, I was walking on this mound and looked over into this huge, it was this sort of huge cliff, and saw what looked like the remains of a concentration camp, but there was something really strange about it. And I looked it up later, and it was the remains of a set from like Schindler's List. And it was really strange because I was with my sister and we were like, this is really foreboding, like we need to be really blah. But at the same time, we were among that sort of history. And so there was this strange, like, what is real, what is fiction, how ought I act in this circumstance type thing happening. Yeah, that was creepy in a different way and unsettling. Anyone else? Okay, cool. Thank you so much again for coming. Yay.
If anybody does not have a copy of the book and would like one and like it signed, you're welcome to grab one and just pay for it on your way out. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for coming, and we will see you soon. Thank you.
I wish I was going on with you.
You can watch yourself on live stream.
Oh no.
For punishment.
Josh.